Y'all feel like lead changes are one of those things that's easier said than done? I used to feel like that too, but stay tuned for this video. I'm going to show you all the prerequisites you need to have a very successful lead change. Hey guys, I'm Johnny Flores, and this is Lucia, my 4-year-old AKHA Ranching Heritage horse. And this video, we're going to go through all the prerequisites you need for a lead change, all the things I've done with her and my other 2 horses. All right guys, let's start from the beginning. Very first thing your horse needs to know before lead changes and most maneuvers is disengaging. Moving their butt around their forehand. This is what disengaging looks like. Oh, now the way to cue it is when you're just chilling and you're sitting here and you're kind of slouched, because Western riders do sort of slouch a little bit. You could see your toes. You should always be able to see your toes. All you do is just take it out of your view. And see, my toe moved a little bit further back, but I'm not kicking her flank. It's just a little bit right cinch. And when teaching this initially, it's a good idea to put a lot of forward motion between the cue. That'll sort of help the horse keep from overthinking about it. So I'll just walk out. Hey, give me your head. And ask her to move her butt a little bit. And then ask her to walk out again. And it's always a good idea to make the exercise you're doing insignificant, not something worth overthinking. So again, I'm going to ask her to move her butt. Come on. And eventually you could do it from a standstill. Again, I just want to take my toe out of my view. And when I'm putting it on her, if she's not really moving, I can use my spur and say, hey, move, move. I'm asking, and then I'm telling her. And eventually she'll get really soft to it, to where I don't have to tell her. I'm barely putting my calf on her. And that's the first prerequisite to a good lead change. So the next thing that a horse needs to know, the second prerequisite, is leg yields. It's the first side movement that a horse will ever learn. And the way it's taught is by going in a circle and having a nice little bend here. And then this inside leg right here, this left leg, is going to put a little bit of pressure on her. And she's going to move away from it. And she's going to sort of bend her body. So right now, she's leading to that side with her ribs. She's sort of making a C shape. Oh, the reason why leg yields are really important for a lead change is because as the horse understands how to get off of your legs, eventually it'll turn into a side pass as it gets a little bit straighter, and then eventually a half pass. And having them understand how to move off of your legs and being really supple will help prevent insecurity, because lead changes can sometimes be a little bit jarring and a little bit scary for some horses. And by being able to help push them off of your legs and them understand it, you'll avoid having to use your spurs a ton. And so, cueing it on a finished horse, I'm going to just stand here, and there's a debate on the weight shift. Some people say you put your weight on the inside. That's subjective, just don't lean. And I'm going to put a little bit of my leg there, and then I'm going to tell her. So again, I'm going to ask her really lightly. She's moving, so I'm not going to use my spur. Good girl. And again, if you find a little bit of resistance with your horse, then just do a little bit of it and then walk out, pretend it didn't matter, listen to a song on YouTube or whatever, and then try it again. The whole idea here is to make all these prerequisites insignificant and not worth overthinking. And that's number 2. All right, this is the third prerequisite for a good lead change, and it is very important. Make sure not to skip over this one. It is haunches in. So haunches in is basically right here. I'm looking at you and I'm straight. All 4 feet are roughly in the same position, so it looks from this view like she has 2 tracks. And what I'm trying to do with haunches in is push over her butt and create, easy girl, and try to create 4 tracks. So she'll have front right, front left, back right, back left. And when I'm doing this, I'm trying to keep my weight right here over that left shoulder. Now, haunches in is not something that's just, move the butt, whatever. It's also a strength training exercise that helps condition them for a lead change. Because as you're going around, say you're going to your left and you want to cue a lead change, that hip movement will be necessary to initiate that lead. Now when doing haunches in, make sure to try to keep that head tucked and be light on them. And start off in straight lines. And do a straight line, and then let her walk out. Don't mess with the horse, just let him walk out. And ideally have them walk out in somewhat straight lines. I had to turn because there's a fence there, but you don't want to do a haunches in and then go into a spin. You want to, again, keep that forward motion. Also, so your horse doesn't start assuming. Haunches in is something that needs to be done on the straight at all 3 gaits, and it should be done in circles. And when I'm working on it in circles, it's very similar to disengaging. That foot's coming back a little bit, and I'm pushing over her butt. And then my hands help fix her head. And I might use some kisses to get some forward motion. She kind of stalled up right there, so I'm going to help her. And then walk out. And if you can do this at all 3 gaits, and especially a trot, you'll have a good basis of strength for a lead change. A lot of times horses have all the movement necessary, and they're really pliable and you can just move them around like butter, but they're not strong. And by doing haunches in, you'll get them to the point where they can be strong enough to do a successful lead change without being kicked and spurred and hammered on. And that is the number 3 prerequisite for a good lead change. Hey guys, if you like what you're watching so far and you're already learning a lot, please like and subscribe. It really helps me help you out. And without further ado, let's continue watching. So the number 4 prerequisite for good lead change is counterbent circles. These are really, really important for teaching the horse to get their body out of their own way, because many times the horse ends up kind of tripping over their own feet. But it also acts as a huge preventative for the most common set of problems, which is dropping the shoulder or diving. And because I trained her in a hackamore to do lead changes, that was something that it really worked on. So counterbent circles are really simple. If you can have your horse bent in a circle, he'll be able to do a counterbent circle. So what you're going to do is keep that head facing the left, and you're going to push with your left leg to go to the right. So right now my hands are saying left, but my leg is saying right. And she's kind of doing it. Eventually there's a sort of crossing over that you feel, instead of what a lot of people think is counterbent circles. They think this is a counterbent circle, and it's not, because she's not moving her shoulders out of the way. Much like how a spin has a very exaggerated crossover, the same thing will happen for a counterbent circle. And so when teaching this, a lot of times your horse is going to be like, you want me to go left? And you're going to be like, yeah, but I also want you to go right. And your horse is going to be like, what the heck does that mean? So when teaching it, it's a good idea to maybe just start off on a straight and just sort of push their shoulders over a little bit, and maybe not ask for so much head. I'm just asking her to kind of move her shoulders. I'm not asking for a ton of flex. Let's go over here so maybe you can get a better view. So I'm going to walk, and with this right leg I'm going to push her that way, and I'm going to try to keep her head facing a little bit towards you, the camera. And I'm not asking for a whole lot, and then again I'll walk out. If you notice, all of these exercises finish with walking out before trying again. So the reason why counterbent circles are so important is it teaches the horse to get their shoulders out of the way. With both the rein, which I'm doing mostly here with just the rein, and it teaches with the leg. The reason why that's so important is because if you do a lead change, and say you change to the right, and then your horse is now diving like an idiot into the circle, you can be able to pick up that shoulder and say, hey, pick that up. And then you can do a slight haunches in with that right leg and push their butt in and get them collected and rounded. But also when you're changing a lead, the horse's butt, let's say they're going on the right and you need to change to the left. Their butt needs to now move this way. But if their shoulders are in the way, they're gonna hit each other, and the horse is never gonna change. He's gonna crossfire or get nervous or some other problem. So by being able to move the shoulders, you're saying, hey, here's an open area for you to put your butt for that left lead change. And it makes it very easy for the horse. And that's the number 4 prerequisite for a really good lead change. So this is the number 5 prerequisite to a lead change, lead departures. Many times you hear lead changes and people try to break it down, but the easiest way that I've heard it explained is that a lead change is a lead departure midair. It develops strength and the muscle memory in a horse for how to do a lead change. So what a lead departure essentially is parting for a lead. You ask for a little bit of butt here, not too much, and then you ask for their head to go down, and then they depart into that lead. And it should be very smooth. That wasn't our best, but it was pretty smooth. Good girl. Oh. The reason why we do that, the horse learns when he moves to the right, it just makes sense for those legs to go on the right lead. But it also engages their abs and their back and picks them up. And then by tucking and then pushing, it'll help them learn how to collect a little bit. Oh. So again, I'm going to ask for a little bit of head. Come on. And then ask for go. And I'm trying to push her butt and make her head go down so that she can round. And it's a good idea to work on these and lope for a little bit and then walk again and then do it again. And the way I'm cueing it, very, very to a haunches in, I'm asking for a little bit of butt, but I want her shoulders straight. I want her head a little bit collected. And then right when it's where I want it to, I'm going to squeeze with both legs and kiss. And try to keep that head collected, but not hang on the hackmore. If you're in a snaffle, it might be a little bit different. And try to hold this lead for a little bit, and that rate wasn't that good. Try to rate down to a walk. Oh, what a lot of horses will sometimes think is when you're working on lead departures is you'll start walking and they're like, I gotta lope again. So it's a good idea to walk out for a little while, maybe do a lap, maybe even work on spins or something like that, and then do your lead change or lead departure again. And so that is the 5th prerequisite for a good lead change. Now this is the 6th prerequisite for a really good lead change. It is extension to collection, and the way that I like to work on it is trotting really fast and not really collecting, really extending like a ranch horse, just covering ground, and then asking for haunches in, because suddenly that horse has to turn it on and get the strength and bring their butt around. It's not necessarily something I needed to do so much for her because she was already pretty strong, but my other horse in the barn who struggled with lead changes for years has found success doing that exercise repeatedly. So if you watch the haunches in section, you already know how to cue it, so I'm not going to tell you how to do it again. But I'm going to try to trot out here, and I'm not asking for collection. I'm asking for the opposite. I want extension. I want her trotting like she's trying to get across 1,000 acres. And trot a little bit and not pick at her. I don't want her assuming anything. Her nose might even go out. That's fine. And then I want to ask for a little bit of haunches in to the left. Now it was a little bit quick, but it could have been faster. And this is kind of a test to really see, is your horse ready? Is he strong enough? Because again, your horse can be ready technically, but he may not be strong enough. And who cares? Hey, no. I just want haunches in. And see, she's assuming. That's not good. Stop loping. Might also tell you that your horse assumes like she likes to do. And so right as she thinks that I might do it again, I'm going to stop her and not feed into her assumption. But by doing that, a lot of times what your horse might end up doing is they might end up throwing their head, or they may end up turning their body instead of properly engaging in a real haunches in. They may just sort of do a kind of a side pass. It's a really, really good test, especially for long-backed horses that aren't super strong and really adept at bringing their back up. And it's a 6th prerequisite for a great lead change. So the 7th prerequisite for a really good lead change is counter cantering. This is one of those things like salt. If you put a little bit on your steak, it's great. You put a lot, you ruin your steak. Now, counter-cantering is simply doing the wrong lead. But it's a little bit more than that. The reason why you do it is to put the horse in a position where they want to change leads and they're asking you to, and they may just, and you're saying no. So you're kind of creating more control over their lead. Now, I'm going to show you guys what that looks like. So I'm going to do a left circle here. Here's my left circle. It's not super round, but that doesn't really matter. I'm not focusing on doing a perfect circle. And the way that my legs are set up for that left circle, I'm going to keep that in this right circle. I'm going to push her hip a little bit. And I'm basically keeping that left lead in that right circle. Ooh. That's not necessarily correct, but the whole time I was doing that, she was like, can I change my lead? Can I change my lead now? What about now? Can I change it now? And I'm saying, no, you need to hold it there. And the way that I'm cueing it, when I'm going to the left, there's a sort of diagonal. This left foot is pushed forward a bit, and this right foot goes back, and my hips exaggeratedly go like this. And if you're lope on any horse that's even somewhat engaged, you'll feel that. Feel the very obvious diagonal. And notice this left leg is pretty far forward. It's going to stay here through this left circle. And that's why you do counter-cantering, because she tried to change her leads there. And I said, no, you need to change them back. I'm actually really glad that she messed that up right there so you could see. So again, the diagonal that you're on, say for left going to the right, if you're like this, you're going to keep that same foot position throughout that left circle. And what you may also find needs to happen is when you're going and you're counter-cantering, you may have to push that hip a little bit to help keep the horse doing that lead, because they're going to want to change to that right lead to go on their right circle. That's very natural for them. But don't do this a lot. Do this now and again in between exercises, once every couple days or so, because by doing it a lot, you'll get the horse real comfortable loping or counter-cantering. And at that point, there's going to be no lesson there, because the horse is like, oh, okay, whatever, I'll do this. But the lesson is, I want to change. And you're saying no. And the horse is like, okay, that's the lesson. So this was the 7th prerequisite, counter-cantering, for a really, really good lead change. If you made it to this part of the video, congratulations and thank you. So this is the 8th and final big prerequisite for a good lead change. They are simple lead changes. Now, the reason why you would do these is because your horse has all the buttons and they're almost strong enough to do a real flying lead change, but they can't, either because of nerves or rider error or something along those lines. Now, a simple lead change is, say you're going to the left, you break down to a walk or trot, and then you change to the right. And now in AQHA, the rules dictate that you have 2 to 3 strides. Otherwise, you incur penalties. I think in certain disciplines, you can actually get DQ'd. But regardless, when you're training, it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to show sort of a simple lead change here. On the left lead, I'm going to go around that pole, come that way, and then do it for you guys. So I think she walked like 4 or 5 steps right there. Really fast little Mr. Crab steps. That's fine because we're training. Sometimes what you may find is that the horse doesn't rate down and they try to go through your hands in simple lead changes. So it's a good idea to make them walk every other time or every couple times so that they don't learn to get too forward and too uppity against your hands, because that can prove to be very annoying. Right there, her head was up, but she rated. Right there, she tried to go through my hands again. She's a naturally hot horse, so her inclination to do that is much higher than Caliber over in the barn, who's much lazier. But regardless, I'm still training. So as you're working on simple lead changes, eventually you want to really shorten the number of strides that the horse has between the lope and trot and then the other side loping. And it'll eventually really teach them how to change their leads and be very stress-free. Now, it's a debated topic because some people think that it might be a crutch. And for a while, she used to change leads and say she was going on the left, and then I'd cue the right. She would do this, and she would actually slow down and then change to the right. And I wasn't slowing her down. I was actually cueing her to change to the right. But she wasn't strong enough, and I think she knew that, so she'd slow down and change to the right. And I still consider that a win, because the horse knows what you want. They just can't quite deliver it for you, and they may need some more strength training or may need a little bit of speed behind them. The other way that you might do a simple lead change would be over a jump. Those are called jump changes. This isn't necessarily the most Western way to change leads. I've seen a lot more people in the English world do this, but regardless, it works pretty well. Now, sometimes we might have trouble doing simple lead changes because the horse speeds up or does something else along those lines, and that's fine. As a trainer, it's always good to have more than one way to do the same thing. And so what I'm trying to do here is I'm going to lope to that pole over there, or 2 poles, I put 2 together. And ideally, she's going to sort of disturb her loping stride and kind of jump, but not really because it's not a big jump. And in that jump, I'm going to hope that she lands on the other leg or on the other lead. And doing this will kind of make it a little bit sort of like, haha, I got you. I did it without the horse knowing. She sped up a little bit after there. That's fine. We'll just slow down again. But that's basically what a jump change is. And I don't really like to do it with big barrels and big old jumps like that, because I find that it's very strenuous on the horse, and I'm not a jumper anyway, so I don't know all the techniques to do that. But just putting out 2 simple poles will help her pick herself up and try to land on that right lead. And that's not something that I did a lot with her primarily. I did it with my horse in the barn, who every time I do a lead change, he'd get claustrophobic, and he'd try to run out, and he'd get anxious. And so by doing that, it was sort of like I did it without him realizing I did it. And it really helped to establish a lead change cue. And so these have just all been really good prerequisites to work on to create good lead changes in different horses. Some of the exercise worked for her, some of them worked for those horses. And I really appreciate you guys watching, but I did have one more closing thought to say. In this video, I'm using a hackamore on her. I believe that all the prerequisites should be done in a hackamore because it'll teach at the rate your horse can learn, and you can't hide anything. If your horse isn't strong enough, they won't change their lead. If your horse throws their head, you'll have to figure out why instead of just bringing it down. And eventually, once they learn how to change leads in a hackamore, they don't need to be perfect, but once they can, then you can move to a snaffle or another type of bit to kind of clean some things up, maybe get a little bit more impulsion, or if you're trying to get show ready. But thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Share with me if you have any other comments or things that you want me to go over in a future video. Thank you very much.